Hey everyone, this is Anthony from the Console Gaming Crew, and we could not be happier to announce that we are now part of the Boss Rush Podcast Network and are featured on BossRushGames.com. BossRushGames.com is a place where you can find up-to-date news articles, blogs, and podcasts about video games. In addition to that, there is a growing collection of podcasts in not just the gaming community, but other communities as well. We are honored to be part of such a great network of podcasters, so please stop by and give everyone a listen. Thank you so much and enjoy the show.
Yo, crew members, what it be?
Heyo! Heyo.
Oh, no, okay, fine. I see how it is.
This feels awfully intimate right now. I just want to say this. I'm back in the studio because we have a very special episode today that we are super excited about. We'll get to that in a second, but I'm basically rubbing knees with Wes here. And it feels
You ain't
good.
mad.
It feels good.
Well, I say you ain't mad at it.
No, I'm not mad. But yeah, so like I said, we have a very, very special episode today. Unfortunately, Anthony can't be here with us for it. I know he wishes he could be.
Oh, yeah.
But he couldn't be here, so Wes, why don't you tell the people what we got going on?
All right, so I decided to go ahead and send a direct message, via Twitter. And I said, yo, we would love to have you on the podcast. It would be great. And then she answered back saying, absolutely. Let me know when. Let's figure it out. So I'm talking about the TikTok superstar, the just all-around badass human being, Catieosaurus.
Yeah, man. And boy, does she wear many hats. And I will let her
And many
talk about
glasses.
that. Many hats and many glasses. Yes.
Dude, she has quite a collection of glasses, and I love it.
Yeah, and when the interview kicks off, we'll let her, talk about all that. We don't want to give too much away, right off the bat. But already, just leading up to this point, super easy to deal with. She's been up to the minute contact.
Yes.
And couldn't have been better to deal with. So
yeah. So without further ado, here's Catieosaurus. All right, crew members, we have an awesome guest today. She is the co-host of the Infinite Quest podcast, TikTok star, all-around amazing human being, and she will be in Philly for the PAX Unplugged, which is going to be going on from December 10th to 12th. Ladies and gentlemen, Catieosaurus.
Hello, it's me. Also, I gotta take issue just right off the bat. TikTok star is a very strong word. That's a lot of pressure to put on one person.
Oh, no pressure. No pressure
I
at
don't
all.
feel like a TikTok star. People think that I'm a TikTok star, but I don't feel like, there's people on TikTok with like 20 million followers. Like that is like baffling to me.
Yeah, it's all relative, I guess. So to someone with, 10,000 followers, you're a TikTok star. To someone with 20 million followers, you don't feel like one. So it depends on who you are, I guess.
Right? Exactly. That's maybe a good way to look at it.
But to most people we know, absolute TikTok star.
It's
just
very
saying.
fancy. Very fancy.
Sorry, you go ahead.
All right, so the way that I found you was I was on TikTok and you came across and you talked about like ADHD, neurodivergency within just normal life. And actually, you helped both, because I was the one that sent you the email, you helped both my wife and I learn about our own neurodivergencies. So number one, thank you. I want to go ahead and
thank you. That's so kind. Thank you.
But to go ahead and just kind of help anybody who listens to this and doesn't exactly know, can you give a explanation of what neurodivergency is?
Yeah, so neurodivergency, put very, very broadly, is an umbrella term that we use to describe anybody whose brain doesn't necessarily fit what, science would call the norm. Now, what the norm is and whether or not normal actually exists is a much longer conversation that can be absolutely up for debate. But when I talk about neurodivergency in particular, I'm talking about kind of a few specific things. I'm talking about ADHD. I'm talking about autism spectrum. I'm talking about like cognitive learning disorders and disabilities, that kind of thing. And there are some people who include just like mental illness as a whole under the neurodivergency umbrella. Some people don't. So it kind of depends on who you're talking to. But basically what neurodivergency means is just a sort of collection of just different ways that brains can be and exist in the world, if that kind of makes any sense at all.
Definitely does. And I mean, like I said, I am one that is diagnosed with anxiety and ADHD. So I mean, I definitely fall within the same spectrum as you.
It's a party. It's definitely
yeah.
a party all the time.
Yeah, I actually, believe it or not, I went to school for psychology. Well, feels like a decade ago at this point. And one thing that always stuck with me that one of my professors told me is that, because people are always talking about what's quote unquote normal, what's normal. And she always said that normal is from here to here, which,
Yeah.
basically there's such, there is no normal. You know what I mean? Everyone's brains work differently and, they're all fine. But anyway, we did want to know, how did you get started using TikTok to help bring more awareness to neurodivergency?
Oh
Was
my
it just
gosh.
like, it just kind of happened, TikTok blew up and it was just like the perfect platform, or?
I mean, honestly, it was a perfect storm. So I have a younger sister who's in college, and she's very like hip to what all the cool kids are doing these days. And she had told me about this app called TikTok. And I was like, I don't need another app. Like I don't ever use Snapchat. I don't even know how Snapchat works. I'm not ready for TikTok. This is too much. But so basically what happened was like I downloaded it to a Peezer and I made a couple of like really just crappy like lip sync videos and stuff. And then right before the pandemic started, I made a video just as a joke because there was this trend going around at the time and it was like things in my Japanese home that just make sense. And it was just everybody was doing these videos about like their like weird houses. And my house is like always a mess. My house is always dirty, always messy. And the thing that I just thought was hilarious about these videos was like everybody's houses just look like a magazine. You know what I mean? And so I did one and I was like, things in my ADHD house that just make sense. And it was like this pile of boxes that's been here for a year, And I kind of just did like a little parody video and it blew up. It was like my first video that like actually went like viral. And a lot of people in the comments said a combination of a few things. One, my house looks just like this. It's so weird. It's so like weird and cool to know that like, I'm not alone. A lot of people said, I had no idea that you had ADHD. And then a lot of people just said like, okay, well, like my house looks like this. Well, what can I do about it? So I started making like, just a couple videos here and there. But at the time I was working as the entertainment director at the Georgia Renaissance Festival. I was running a Renaissance Festival, which is a very interesting job. But that was so then the pandemic happened and I lost my job during the pandemic. And as a person who was running a Renaissance Festival and my whole entire background is in performance and theater and all of that stuff, all like my industry disappeared overnight. Like all of my friends, every person I'd ever known, worked with, like we were all out of a job. None of us knew what was going on. It was terrifying. The theaters closed, everything shut down. And so I kind of had this moment where I was like, I am a performer and I'm a teacher and I'm an educator and I have no place to put my energy and I have no place to put my time. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll make a TikTok about ADHD or whatever. And so really during the pandemic, like when it was at like sort of its height, TikTok became my lifeline because I was able to perform, I was able to teach, I was able to like have like a connection with people. And I think it just like really wound up for me. I got very, very lucky that it was like right place, right time. Because there were so many people with neurodivergencies who were either learning that about themselves because their structures were breaking down during the pandemic, or they were really struggling, even if they already knew they were neurodivergent. So it was just like, I just sort of like found myself like opening this conversation with an audience that was just like really needed that at the time, if that makes sense.
It does. And it's fascinating that it worked out that way because TikTok is such a platform where you can reach so many people. And I know you help so many people that are dealing with certain things and also just learn things that they didn't know. And, people it's the same thing. I had this conversation, I may have had it with you, I don't remember, but about people get the wrong impression of apps sometimes. Like there's so many people that I mentioned TikTok and they're like, oh, that's just people doing a bunch of dances, right? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Like you can find that stuff on there, but there's so many things that you can go to TikTok for. And some of the videos that I've watched that you've done, like I can't even imagine the amount of people that you've helped.
It's been really gratifying, but yeah, it is really funny to be like, hi, I educate about mental health on TikTok, and people are like, cool. I'm like, no, it's a real job, I promise.
It's a real thing. I'm gonna let you ask that question because it was fascinating.
Which one?
The third one.
The next
I
one.
like that you have it written down. This makes me feel very important.
As soon as we knew you were coming on the podcast, we were like, there's so many things that we have a short amount of time that we need answers to.
That's all right. I will try to make my answer shorter too. I tend to go really I tend to get really excited and go long-winded, so I'll shut up. It's fine.
No, it's fine. No, we want you to do exactly what you want to do. And funny thing about it, so I created, like, I sent you the direct message on Twitter, and then you said send me an email. I'm like, great. I created something in my notes. My awesome wife went ahead and went through it, touched it up a bunch, you know what I mean, because she's better at the stuff than I am. And then it sat in my notes for like 3 days, 4 days. And I'm looking on my phone going, oh, she didn't answer back. Oh no, what do I do? And then I realized, wait a minute, I don't have anything in my sent. And I'm like, oh crap. So and then I realized it was in my notes, and then I finally sent it. And then you got right back to me. So it was just like, you just cracked me up. But
I do that all the time. It's fine.
With everything that you have done, being a slam poet, being Shakespearean, you know what I mean, just expert essentially. I mean, you do have doctorate in that. Like when you have your master's in that. My question for you is, would you ever write a book?
I am. I'm not.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm actually like supposed to tell people this or not, but it's cool. I'll give you guys the exclusive. But yeah, we've actually been working with a literary agency for a couple of months now, and we're looking at between 2 and 3 books right now. We're talking about doing it like just like sort of a ADHD book. I really want to. My special sort of interest in relationship with ADHD is, well, it's relationships. I said that the dumbest way possible. But my special interest is like sex and relationships and ADHD. And I recently got so interested in that I became a certified sex educator, and I've been learning and researching a lot. And there's a lot of really interesting information out there about like ADHD and sex. So I want to write a book about that. And then I have a secret dream, which is, I really want to write a children's book. I've always wanted to write a children's book. I've got a bunch of different ideas for them. I have so many of them just like on my computer, but I really want to write one about ADHD. Because I grew up.
I love that.
Yeah, I like Levar Burton is like my literal like actual hero. And so I have this like dream that like Levar Burton will like sign my book that I've written someday. Like I don't know if it'll happen, but it would be really nice.
With everything that you've done and everything I have no doubt in my mind that you're going to write a children's book and that LeVar Burton will sign it.
Apparently LeVar Burton is going to be at ECC. And so I'm very nervous because I'm like, what if I accidentally am perceived by LeVar Burton? I might actually die. So
it actually made me show my age, because when everyone was going through that whole who should be the next Jeopardy host thing, and someone brought up LeVar Burton, and then I saw some people from the younger generation go, who is LeVar Burton? I was like, what?
It's not okay. It's not okay.
It's not okay. I have to add a question into the ones that you had. So please, thank you for giving us that scoop. That makes us feel way more important than we actually are.
And we will absolutely have you back on for when you drop the book if you wanted to.
It turns out that writing a book with ADHD is exceptionally hard. Like my poor literary agent, she's been so patient, but she's like, hey, so you guys are gonna like write this book though? Like, are you guys gonna like, can I see some pages? And we're like, no. So like we're working on it very slowly, very surely. So it's gonna be a little bit, I think, but we're hoping to do it, get it moving soon.
Because my next question was gonna be with everything that you do, and now finding out that you're writing a book, and it wasn't just one book. You said 3, right? You said 2, 3?
Maybe we'll see what
you think. We'll start with one now.
What gets picked up, you know?
How do you find time to sleep? Do you have time to sleep?
Oh God, I haven't slept in years. It's fine.
It doesn't show. It doesn't show.
All right. Now, one of the things that you do with your co-host, Hey Good, is you guys have a Discord server as well as a Minecraft server, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So my question for you is, what is it about Minecraft that the ADHD part of your brain fixates on?
Oh God. All right, buckle in for a 45-minute rant. I love Minecraft. I love Minecraft so much. And I think it's because, and it's really interesting because I've actually studied Minecraft. Like a group of researchers studied Minecraft in relationship to like kids with ADHD. And what they found was, it was fascinating because Minecraft is like this perfect sort of microcosm of the needs of the ADHD brain, right? Because there are sort of like instant gratification rewards, like you get the wood, you make the thing, right? But then there are sort of like longer term goals, like, if you want to like create like a massive redstone circuit or computer or something like that. So there are like small goals that you can easily achieve. There are longer term goals that you sort of have to plan for and prepare for. There's that. Then there's also like, you can do whatever you want. So if you just want to like, grab an Elytra and just fly for an hour and a half and just see what happens, like you can do that. And so because of the way that the world is built and how it's like just like a unlimited generative game, it winds up being really, really good and really, really satisfying for a lot of people with ADHD. But there's also sort of like a counterpoint to that, where we see that a lot of kids with ADHD have a very unhealthy fixation on Minecraft because of that, because it's like, oh, I want to keep mining, I want to keep looking for diamonds, I want to keep doing this thing. And so like the research is really, I think it's really cool, because it's basically like it can be amazing for your kid, but also it can be terrible for your kid. But there's never, and I think this part is important to say, there's never any conversation about grown-ass adults playing Minecraft. And that's what I think is funny. It's like they do all of this research and all this stuff about kids and ADHD. And the conversation about kids and ADHD and video games is like big at this point. They're doing a lot of studies, they're doing a lot of research, which is cool. But it's like, okay, but I'm 33 and I play Minecraft and I run into the same problems, as these 7-year-olds who are in these studies. And I'm just like, it'd be nice to get some like adult representation of neurodivergency in gaming, which is honestly one of the reasons why I started doing what I do, and advocating for inclusivity and accessibility for neurodivergent brains in gaming, because adults are being left out of the gaming conversation. And I think that's really weird, because we are the biggest game playing audience at this point.
Yeah, especially our generation.
Mm-hmm.
With you talking about the dangers, or the potential dangers for kids with ADHD or neurodivergency playing the games, that was actually going to be one of my questions. I wanted to know if you thought that video games as a coping mechanism is a good thing or a bad thing when it comes down to like somebody with a neurodivergency.
I mean, this is going to sound like a cop-out answer, but I really think it's the same question as, should you take medication for your ADHD? I get asked that question easily 100 times a day. And the real answer is that medication is a tool. Video games as a coping mechanism can be an incredibly useful tool. But to extend the metaphor and to, sort of like really lengthen it, if you think of it as an actual tool, like a saw or a chainsaw or like whatever, there are healthy ways to use it. There are safe ways to use tools. There are ways that you can use a tool and they really like enhance your life. And there are also incredibly dangerous and foolish ways to use a chainsaw that can get you very, very hurt.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I really like the word tool, because I think that it encapsulates, like, sometimes there's a learning process. Sometimes you have to learn about yourself. You have to learn your own strengths. You have to learn your own weaknesses and say, okay, is this tool right for me? It might be. Video games as a coping mechanism might be a phenomenal tool. But if you know that one of your weaknesses is hyperfixation, and you know that you're going to sit down to play an hour of Minecraft and then, 17 hours are going to go by and then you're like, what day is it? That's something to be aware of. And so then, that's when we introduced other safety tools, other safeties, like, setting a timer or setting like parental controls up on the computer or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think like video games as a coping mechanism is incredibly useful and incredibly important. But I also think that with any tool, it has to be used safely and it has to be used responsibly.
That was no cop out at all. That was a phenomenal answer. And you brought up inclusivity, and that's something that how much have we touched on that in the podcast just in the last couple months? We actually just recently did an episode about LGBTQ representation in games, and how we're hoping, and not just with that specifically, but we're hoping to finally get to a point where when you see that representation in video games, it's no longer surprising.
Yeah.
Like we played, I don't know if you've ever played it or whatever, but there's a game, The Last of Us Part 2, that I just played, where the protagonist of the game is a lesbian, and it's like, it's so cool to see, because growing up playing games, you never got to see that. You always had almost kind of the same cookie cutter,
Yeah.
types of characters in games. And it's going to be nice to get to a point where, you know, you no longer feel the need to constantly, to give kudos to a company for doing that, because it just becomes the norm to not exclude entire groups of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I want to go back to the podcasting thing a little bit, because we asked this question to ourselves before. And we had many answers, because we know things now. We started this, 2 years ago?
Dude, I see this question on Twitter all the time.
Oh, do you?
People, yeah, because I'm like, so, because I run the Twitter page, and you see this a lot of times with like other handles. They'll go, well, I mean, yeah, go ahead and ask the question.
And I'm sure you've answered this 50 million times, so feel free to shut me up if you don't want to answer it 50 million and one times. But if there was something that you know now that you could have taught yourself when you started podcasting, what would it be? Because we ask ourselves this all the time, like, man, what do we know now that, we could have taught ourselves then? Because when we first started this thing, I think for us it was like we wanted everything immediately. Like, we wanted to be great immediately, and we were like shooting for the moon, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it puts a little bit too much pressure. So I think, like, for us, it would have been just relax and enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah.
As opposed to just just worrying about the numbers, because everyone always worries about the numbers.
Oh, see, I mean, that's like maybe I think that's like the opposite to my answer, is because like we didn't expect to get successful. Like, frankly, like we were shocked the first week when like 200 people listened to the podcast, and we're like, oh my God, 200 whole people like listen to our pod, and we, and now we're, 200,000 people or whatever. And so like for us, like I think the hardest lesson that we had to learn is that our audience supports us, which is really weird. It's really weird to say that was a hard lesson for us to learn. But, one of the things with me and my neurodivergency shows up a lot is like all or nothing thinking. Like, if we don't have a perfect episode, then we shouldn't post it. If I fumble an answer, we shouldn't post the pod, whatever. Yeah. And so we were really like, we started off really loosey-goosey, and we were like literally recording like Skype conversations like we were doing now, and it was just me and Eric hanging out. And then as it got a little bit more popular, we were like, oh shit, people are like listening, people are looking at us. And we changed what we were doing for a while. Like, we changed it, and people were like, what are you doing? Like, we came to hear you guys talk. We came for this vibe. Why are you guys getting away from the vibe? And it was because like I had convinced myself that like the vibe wasn't right. It wasn't correct. It wasn't good enough. And so I think learning to trust myself, learning to like, I trust Eric implicitly, but like just trusting each other in terms of like, I think that episode is good to post, I think not. But honestly, just really trusting our audience, because like this week we didn't do a podcast, and we had meant to. We sat down, we recorded something, but we were both really tired. We were really burnt out, and it was a bad episode. And so we're like, okay, we're just not going to post it. And we had that in sort of like internalized fear that like, oh, people are going to be mad at us, or people are going to be disappointed, or people are going to be whatever. And in reality, we got like 7 emails that were like, hey, we're really proud of you for taking a break this week. Like, that was awesome. Like, good job, guys. And, like people on Twitter do the same thing. Like, they tweeted us like, oh, no episode this week. Awesome. Thanks for taking a break. We're proud of you. And so it's like, just, I think trusting yourself and trusting your audience to like have your back, at least for us and what we're doing. That was a lesson that I wish I had learned earlier, because it would have saved me so much stress and so much like, oh God, it's not perfect. And I think that would have been nice to know at the front.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely super important. We have a few episodes that will never see daylight. Three. I feel like there's more than that, but we'll go with 3. But yeah, I think our podcast started to take off more when we started to relax and just because the reason we started it is, it was just the 4th of July. We were all hanging out. We love video games. We're close friends, and we were like, why can't we? You know, everyone else does it. Like, why can't we just do it, for fun? And then when we started, it was still fun, but we, like I said, we had too many goals that seemed a little bit too based on,
we put a lot on
numbers
ourselves
and stuff like that. So it was like, let's just enjoy what we're doing. And the more that we did that, the more we started to see our listens double and see ourselves charting in different places, and be like, okay, so this works. This works. Just taking the stress off yourself, do it because you love it, and and whatever happens. But Yeah, no one's ever gonna hear those episodes. We keep telling ourselves that we want to do an episode of our podcast where the three of us go back and listen to the first episode we ever did, but we can't get through more than like 5 or 10 minutes without being like, oh goodness, no, we
Yeah,
can't do
it's the first couple episodes of Infinite Quest are pretty rough, but I kind of love them for that. Like I really do. I really love them for that because it's like, oh my God, we had no idea. We had no idea what this was going to grow into. We had no idea what this was going to become. We were just two people who just liked talking to each other. And so like to me, yeah, they're terrible and they literally sound like they were recorded on a potato. But like they're for me like they're really important. Like I would never delete them. You know what I mean? Like they're awful. And we literally have a disclaimer now where we're like, guys, this is a very bad episode. We just want you to know that. If you want to like sort of like wait until we hit our stride, like skip to episode 4. If you want to see where it all began, go ahead. And so like, but they're like, I don't know, they're just like really special to me. Like I would never get rid of those episodes, even though they are fundamentally terrible.
Yeah, us and and a few friends that we've made through podcasting. I mean, we all go, okay. I mean, the first like half dozen episodes, maybe skip. I mean, before you go ahead and hear the real good stuff. But yeah, our first episode is horrible. It took me like 12 nights to go ahead and work on it at like 2 hours a pop.
Yeah.
Because I was just learning how to edit. And
yeah.
Then
well, yeah.
I mean, it took me forever. And I told these guys, I'm like, if it continues to take this long, we're never going to get episodes out.
Yeah. The same exact thing happened to us. Like Eric does most of the audio editing and then I do like the website updating and all of that stuff. So that's how we divide up the labor. But like, I remember very specifically, it took Eric 4 days to edit the first podcast. And then the next week it took him 3. And then the next week, and so now literally we sometimes do this depending on our schedule, but like it takes us approximately 17 minutes to edit an episode. Like we have it that tight.
Down to a science.
Like, sometimes we have to like literally sometimes we'll like wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, record the podcast for the day, edit it and have it dropped by 9 a.m. You know what I mean? And so it's like, it's one of those things where like the efficiency and like developing a system, I mean, that's so important for me just as a neurodivergent person anyway, but like we really worked to like create a structure where like we are setting ourselves up for success. And it's been really, really useful to have that.
Yeah, that's actually helped us as well because that's another thing that we got much better at was structure because we had no structure when we started. Wes always did all the audio stuff because he knew about that and it took him time as well. So while he was learning, but he's got it down to a science now too. But everything else as far as coming up with topics and how it should go, everyone tried to do everything and it didn't really work. Once we clearly defined roles, okay, who's gonna come up with the idea for the episode and then who can bang out a guideline as to who's gonna do what research, how we want it to come across, and then put it out, is really what helped us a lot. And something with your podcast that definitely comes across that not enough people talk about is you can tell when people are being authentic and have an authentic relationship that doesn't come across as forced. And that's what you have in your podcast is you can tell that you guys are comfortable and nothing's forced. No one's not being themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was one of the comments that we get the most is like, I don't really consider our podcast like educational. Like we talk about, ADHD and we talk, here's some strategies or whatever. But I like, and I know this for a fact, and I do not take this personally at all. But like one of the most popular sort of comments that we get is like, oh my God, I love your podcast because it helps me do the dishes. And like, that's fine. Like if that is what people listen to our podcast for, I am honored to do the dishes with them. But the feedback that we get a lot is I never hear people who talk like me. I never hear podcasters who like will just go off on tangents and then somehow bring it back around and, and they'll edit that out because there's this pressure to have this like linear structure and this like very straightforward conversation. But I've never had a straightforward conversation in my entire life. Like, I don't know what that's like. I don't know, like I couldn't do it. And so for me, honestly, like and this is a weird way to say this, but like it's one of the same reasons that I really enjoy having an OnlyFans. And it's because people say, I've never seen anybody who looks like you with a body like mine do this kind of thing, and it makes me feel empowered, it makes me feel sexy. And like, it's the same thing with like ADHD stuff, is I don't hear people who talk like me, I don't hear people like who stammer and stutter and, you know, lose track of the point, but you guys leave that in and it makes me feel less alone. And so that's like one of the big things that I've realized, is that a lot of this work isn't necessarily about being the most educational, it's not about, you know, being like the biggest expert on whatever. A lot of it is just being sort of a representation of like, hey, you're not alone, and people out there are, you know, like you, and you don't have to be embarrassed or ashamed about who you are. And that's something that I take really seriously. And so like we literally made the decision to stop editing the podcast as much as we had been. We had been taking out the pauses and the digressions and all of that stuff. And then we just started keeping it in because we're like, this is authentic. This is our authentic self. I'm not going to apologize for that, you know? And then this is getting long-winded. I'm sorry.
No.
But the other thing is like we play when we started playing ADHD and D. My husband, Chris, is our DM, and Chris has a clutter. It's like a stutter, but it's basically, instead of stuttering, he does like ums and ahs. And it's a very common sort of, I don't want to say like side effect, but it's a common thing that happens for people who have gone to speech therapy for stuttering, like Chris did, where like basically they assist you with the stutter, but you're still sort of like umming and ahhing. And Chris is really embarrassed because, you know, like DMs on podcasts are like, you know, Matt Mercer and Brendan Lee Mulligan and Griffin McElroy and, you know, these like god tier people who are perfectly eloquent. And Chris was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm really embarrassed. Like, I feel like I take up so much time, like stammering and stuttering. And we were like, yeah, but that's you. There are DMs in the world who stutter. There are DMs in the world who have a clutter. Like, there are DMs in the world who have to pause and gather their thoughts. That's who you are. Like, that's who we are. And so like, we're not going to apologize for that. And it's weird because I think like the audience that we reach has actually honestly appreciated that to the point where like, now we're touring and we're doing live shows and we're playing live D&D. And so, you know, and people are supporting and clapping and cheering and like, yay, Chris, you know. And it's great because like he went from being like very much like, oh, we have to hide this and we have to edit this out, to like, no, this is authentically who we are. Like, we're just going to keep it in because also it shaves off like 8 hours in the editing room. It's fine.
That's how it should be. And the reason why I shot Wes that look while you're giving the answers, because I was like, man, we could actually take a lot of pressure off your plate, because when the three of us are together, we always say this all the time. If we have two of the three of us, because there's three of us that do this show, if we have two of the three in anything we do, we get it done so quickly. Whenever we have the three of us, it takes 10 times as long because we end up going off on tangents. And I was looking at Wes like, because there's so many times that we have to reel it in when we're doing our podcast, because we're like, you know, like, is this what people studio? Like building the studio, yeah. But you know, when people are listening to our podcast, we're like, you know, do they want to hear us going off on this wild tangent for 20 minutes, you know, when we say that this is what the episode's going to be about? And, you know, maybe we should leave some of that stuff because it is who we are. I mean, we go off on tangents and we, you know, we
started saying that the topic of the week is a springboard, because like we kept finding that like we just like we digress so much naturally, and like we get so excited about stuff naturally that we're like, hey, so this week's like sort of topic ish is, you know, whatever organization, but you know, you get what you get. And like if we wind up, you know, discussing the movie Elf for 25 minutes, you know, sometimes it just happens.
Yeah, I mean, we do. I mean, look, for the most part, I do leave them in just because I love hearing the banter, because we're a group of friends that have been together for like 15 years. So yeah. I mean the way that we talk to each other, like in our podcast, we are the most authentic of ourselves. Like, we don't sugarcoat, we don't BS. I mean, we go ahead and give it exactly how we feel. I do know that you've been leaning more towards your YouTube and Instagram as opposed to TikTok. And I know you said before, I mean, TikTok is basically, I mean, they've been pulling the chain. They haven't really been, you know what I mean, being all that great with a lot of their content creators.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to elaborate on that, you absolutely can.
I don't have the energy or time to unpack how shitty TikTok is consistently and all the time. But yeah, I mean, basically like TikTok, I don't think I'm ever gonna like fully get off of TikTok. But one of the things that just really excited me about YouTube was one, just like financially speaking, it's a much more sustainable platform. And then also just like long form content, because like, 60 seconds is great because I can get the little, like little nugget of information out, like whatever. But like YouTube is great because it's like, hey, I'm going to put the minute information like at the front, and then like, do you want to hear 10 minutes more about this? Like, so it's nice because it's very different. I'm still learning. I, like you were saying earlier, I get very hung up like in the editing, and it takes me like forever. But it's been, I think it's time to start transitioning, is basically just what it feels like. I'm very burnt out on TikTok.
I can understand that, and trust me, I mean, we have you subscribed on, on all of our pages. So, is there anything in particular? You could have had your answer talking about, the editing, but is there anything in particular when it comes down to like the YouTube or Instagram or even like the website that that you would want to, like, what was the most important thing that you learned from all that?
I mean, honestly, again, this sounds like such a cop-out, but I honestly think navigating the regret that I feel about not doing this sooner, because I had this like idea in my head of like what a content creator is and what a content creator looks like and what content creation is supposed to be. But like, if this journey has taught me anything, it is that unequivocally across the board, I have been successful in the moments where I am unapologetically myself. And that's a weird lesson to learn past 30. Like, especially as somebody who my background is in performance. Like, I've been an actor and a director, a stage manager, all of these different things. But with acting, you're always trying to like be somebody else. You're trying to be the best version of like this director's version of this character. And the profound shift from always being somebody else with words that somebody else has written, doing blocking and movement and stuff that somebody else has decided for you, to now it's just it's just me on this island of Catieosaurus, figuring out like, okay, what does my content look like? What is my voice? Like, what is my perspective? Like, what am I trying to get across? It's been a huge learning experience. It's been a massive journey of learning to accept myself and accepting my flaws and my failures and my weaknesses, but also really like honoring my strengths. And it's been exhausting. It's been very tiring. It is incredibly hard work. Not a lot of this is luck. Like, and that's another thing, is it is exhausting. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is just realizing that people come to my content because they recognize me. They see themselves in my content. It's incredibly powerful,
That's the word I was just gonna use. It is incredibly powerful. Now, is that something that's a journey, that whole journey, I guess, of self-discovery, of figuring out, all that stuff. Was that, do you think it made it easier or harder to essentially do that publicly, to have people coming along for the journey with you? Did that help at all, or
I think it helped.
did it grow on you?
I mean, I think it definitely grew on me, but I think it helped in the same way that like it's the whole purpose of my content is like, I've said this before in other interviews, but like the reason why I do this is because like I grew up in a house where like, struggling was not allowed, like perfection was expected, like neurodivergency was never considered. And so like, I just don't ever want anybody to feel like I did. I don't ever want anybody to feel as broken and alone and just like fundamentally wrong as I did. And so I think like in my sort of seeking to have that be the goal, like I want to educate people. I want to advocate for neurodivergency. I want people to know that they're not alone. What I learned is that I'm not alone. I'm not the only person who grew up feeling that way. I'm not the only, person who went super, super, late diagnosed, and the profundity of that experience and like how that shaped me and changed me as a person. All of that is like, oh, I'm talking about it. And then, 20,000 people in the comments are also saying me too, like that was my experience too. I see you, I validate you. And so I think in a lot of ways, like, it's been scary because like I'm always, opening myself up for criticism and judgment, and you're never going to please everybody, and that's okay. But I think more than that, as I grew a community, the community also grew around me. And so like and to me, it's like, and I don't want to be like too pretentious about it, but it really is sacred to me. It is such a profound experience to suddenly realize that there are literally a million people out there who see me and validate me and understand me. I think I'm just about to hit 1.5 million people, and yet my mom still doesn't believe that I have ADHD. So like, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay. And you said something that is so very important, which is you can't please everybody.
Yeah.
Because that is another thing that a trap that we fell into before. Like anything that we put out, is how's this going to land with this person, with that person? It's like, well, we can't please everybody. On this, journey that you've been on doing all of these things, you've undoubtedly met or had, interactions with, I'm just going to say a gajillion people because I don't actually know the number, but is there an experience or an interaction that sticks out in your mind?
Oh
with
God,
any...
so many. I mean, one, I'll try and quickly tell this story, but so I'm based in Atlanta, and so Dragon Con is like the big convention.
Yeah.
And we got asked to be guests at Dragon Con, which was like already a big deal because like that had been a bucket list goal of mine for years, was to be on a panel at Dragon Con. And not only were we asked to be on like 5 different panels, like we hosted 4 of them, and like we were a guest, and it was incredible. Like it was this really big deal moment for me. But and actually at PAX, speaking of Philly, at PAX, we're going to be doing the same panel. It's called Neurodiversity at the Gaming Table. And we talk about like experiences, and it's very like, I don't want to say TED talky, but it's very like workshopy and very interactive and that kind of thing. And we're really proud of this panel that we put together. And so Dragon Con was the first time that we did the panel. And so we're like, okay, we have this panel. It was like, 7 p.m. on Friday or whatever. And like, I literally threw up before the panel. I was so nervous. I was like, nobody's going to come. This is going to be a disaster. Like, what are we doing? Like, just the imposter syndrome was so profound. So we get to the room, and there's a line out the door all the way around like the little like lobby thing. And I was like, oh, is there a panel going on? And they're like, no, we're waiting for the panel to start. And then I hear, oh my God, it's them, like from down the line. So like the line of people just like freaks out, and we're like, okay, that's weird. And so we go in the room, we like get set up for the panel. The room fills to capacity in like 5 minutes. They wind up turning like over 100 people away. They open the doors to the room. And so like, we're like yelling out into the hallways to try and get as many people as we can. We do the panel. It's a great panel. The audience was amazing. Then we're like, okay, well, I guess it's time for us to leave. And then we walk out into the lobby, and this line of like 150 people are just standing there. And we're like, oh, what did we run over? Like, we're so sorry. And they're like, no, we're waiting for you. And we're like, what do the fuck do you mean? Like, we're waiting for you. And they're like, yeah. And so like this like very impromptu like meet and greet happens. And the whole time I'm like, this is so surreal. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, what is happening? And people waited in line for almost 3 hours. For 3 hours, those people stood in the lobby to like meet us and just say like, hey, thank you. Thanks for your content. Like, they brought us gifts. Like, one person like brought us like cookies. Like, it was like this whole thing. And that was, I think, the first moment where I realized that like, oh, I think maybe I'm doing something, and like, I still feel weird acknowledging it because it feels like really pretentious, but it was just like, I remember like looking at this line, like we didn't have a table, like nobody, like we didn't expect this. We didn't ask for a table. Like we didn't know. And so like I was just awkwardly standing in the middle of this lobby with like my purse, like, like on the floor between my legs. And like, these people are like just coming up to us and like sharing their like really touching stories. But yeah, that I think is one of like my favorite memories so far, is just the moment where I realized that like people had come to see us, and like my work matters to people. And that's something that I think I will remember for the rest of my life. And also just feeling really bad that people had to wait in line that long, because apparently I talk way too long with every person.
Well, yeah, I mean, your work definitely matters. I mean, definitely matters to us. I mean, 100%.
Well, hey, thank
PAX,
you.
man.
That's very nice
Huh?
of you.
Said we gotta get to PAX. It's in our backyard.
Oh yeah, I know. Look, man, dude, I was thinking about it, dude. I really was thinking about going to PAX this year. You know what I mean? Unplugged. I'm not a board game type of gaming person, but literally because Katie, because you're going, I was like, let me look into this because if I could actually meet somebody who I follow on like social media who just seems like so awesome and down to earth, like it would just be like one of the coolest things.
I promise that I'm supremely awkward in person. It's fine.
Oh, trust me, I am the exact. I'm that way right now. I'm running through in my head right now all different things that I'm saying, like whether it's the right thing or wrong thing.
It's so fine. It's so funny. Like I had to make a video about it because like it got to be such a problem because like we're on this like last leg of our national tour and so many people will come up to me at conventions and I had to just be like, hey everybody, I know that I seem like really cool on my videos, but I'm actually supremely awkward and weird. So if you like talk to me and I'm super awkward and weird, just please know that I really appreciate it. I'm just incredibly awkward. Just like sorry in advance.
Oh, I feel the exact same way. But
Yeah, I got some more. Well, I mean, seeing for the people that listen to us, man, we they'd kill us if we didn't get some video game questions in here. So I'm gonna have to. You actually have one in here. Do you have any pet peeves when it comes to gaming, or anything like that, and that you see in games or anything? Any pet peeves with Minecraft?
I mean, not so much with Minecraft because I sort of genuinely believe that Minecraft is like maybe the most perfect game ever made.
Incredible.
But I think for me, it is when gameplay is inaccessible to me, which happens quite a bit. And a lot of it has to do with my neurodivergency. And I know that like not every game is made for every gamer, and that is totally fine. But like I really struggle with spatial. Like spatial awareness, and especially in like a digital format. I have something called aphantasia, which means that I have a really hard time picturing things in my mind. And so for me, like if a video game doesn't have a readily accessible like UI with like a map or like a compass or something like that, like I literally can't play it because I will go, 2 feet to the left, I'll move the camera and I'll have no idea where I am. I've completely lost my bearings. So that's really frustrating. I also find it to be very frustrating when you can't play back cutscenes, which I know is really silly. But
It's not silly.
I use captions. I'm a person who uses captions because it helps me sort of process everything at the same time. And a lot of video games, one, don't have captions, which I think is fucking bizarre. Because it's like the bare minimum. Like the bare minimum for accessibility is captions. And I'm like, how do you not have captions? It is 2021. But then also like cutscenes will happen and there's no like replay. So if somebody says something important or like cool and I just want to like watch it back, a lot of times you can't. And I find that to be deeply frustrating because I feel like I'm being not necessarily like on purpose, but it feels very like I feel like I'm being excluded from the experience of actually like enjoying the experience of the game as a whole, because of these like minute details that are so easy to fix in like the development stage. So that's kind of my pet peeve is sometimes like the lack of accessibility and honestly just like forethought, I think is maybe it.
The cutscene playback is a fascinating answer, and they absolutely need that because it drives. I mean, I'm very much a story-driven game kind of guy. Like I love falling into a story, so cutscenes are always super important to me.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, my wife knows it drives me nuts because she just loves to play the game, so she skips every cutscene. When I'm watching her play a game, I'm like, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? She's like, I just want to get to the game. I'm like, well, how do you even know what you're doing or why you're doing it?
Yeah.
It drives me bananas, and she knows it does. But favorite game outside of Minecraft?
This is gonna be a very weird answer, but Dead Space. I fucking love Dead Space.
Heck yeah, it's a very good game. Friends
Dead
of ours were
Space-
actually just streaming that.
yeah.
Dead Space was the first game that I ever played all the way through, and I played it all the way through in a single night. I got like super hyper fixated on it,
Nice.
and I was like, this game is amazing. And it also, Dead Space is a really good example because they have that feature where you can like push the button and then it makes like the little glow line so you kind of like know where you're supposed to go. That was the reason why I fell in love with that game because it was a story game. There was like a lot of like development of like the world and it was really interesting, but also I never felt lost. I always kind of knew what I was supposed to do. Like there were puzzles, there were like battle-y parts of it. Like it was a very like varied game in the play. And so I really, really like Dead Space because of that.
Are you going to pick up the remaster when they get done working on it?
I think so. I might stream it, I think. Because a lot of people know that Dead Space was my first game at this point. And so I might do like a Twitch stream of it.
Nice. I have one random question for you.
Oh, I love random questions.
How many pairs of glasses do you have?
58, I think, at this point.
You did a TikTok video to where every segment you had different pair of glasses on.
I did.
And I got so fixated on watching the glasses that I didn't even pay attention to the content until I watched it like 2 or 3 more times.
So I do have an explanation for my ridiculous answer. It is that a very long time ago, actually it was, where are they? Oh, they're on the puppet. It doesn't matter. Anyway, but I wore this like very specific pair of glasses, and people kept asking me over and over and over. They're like, where did you get your glasses? Where did you get your glasses? And so as a complete joke, I did not think it was going to work. This was long. I think I had 100,000 followers at the time. Like I was like nobody. And I made this joke video where I was like, boy, it sure would be a shame if people all tagged Zlul.com and we trolled them into sponsoring me. And then Zlul thought it was like the funniest thing ever. And so they actually agreed to sponsor me. And so I have like an ongoing like deal with them where like,
oh, that's awesome.
Where nothing happens except that I have a discount code. And then every month they send me like 6 or 7 pairs of glasses. So it's just like one of those like really funny things where like it was like my first official sponsorship, but that is why I have so many pairs of glasses, is because like literally every month I just get like a box of like random surprise glasses.
Oh, I love that.
So yeah, so it's pretty fun.
That's amazing. Well, man, first of all, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me
and chatting with us. You want to give the people that listen to us a little heads up on what's going on, what you got coming up? Like we said, you got PAX coming up, and
yeah. So I'm closing out the last leg of my national tour. I'm gonna be at ECCC. I think that was the right amount of C's. I'm gonna be at PAX Unplugged. I'm gonna be at MomoCon. We are also just about to announce the dates of our 2022 tour, pandemic allowing, hopefully. So we've got some news coming out there. You can also find me on all the social medias. I'm on YouTube now, kind of. I stream every day on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/Catieosaurus. I'm a Twitch partner. I'm very fancy. I also have a TikTok.
I did
obviously
see that, and I was mad jealous. Just saying.
Oh God, I have time to tell this story. I'm going to tell this story because it's really funny.
Tell it.
Okay. So right when I started doing Twitch it was the weekend that I got banned from TikTok, which was like a whole thing. And there were protests, there were sea shanties, it was a whole thing. But I was really scared that I was going to lose my platform. And so somebody suggested that I start Twitch, and I was like, rad. So I started a Twitch, and this production company reached out to me, and they're like, hey, we're doing a documentary on people who are like up and coming Twitch streamers and their journey to partner. And we really want to like do this like documentary about people and like how they become partners. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll be in your documentary. So then apparently, well, okay, so what happened is I was just very lucky in that a lot of my community followed me over to Twitch. And so I wound up getting partner in like 2 weeks. Oh, and so this production company like basically just looked at me and they were like, your story is not interesting. It was way too easy. Nobody is going to care about that. And so they kind of just like, I don't want to say they ghosted me, but they like definitely like have like since like moved on from having me be part of this project, because apparently I got partner in a very non-interesting way. And I just think that's really
insane.
Funny.
That is insane.
It was really sad. I was like, oh, I wanted to be in a documentary, but it's fine. But yeah, so I am in fact a Twitch partner, and I do have a podcast. It's called Catie and Eric's Infinite Quest, an ADHD adventure. We talk about life with ADHD and depression and navigating life as neurodivergent adults. We talk a lot about ADHD and relationships. We also play D&D because it's an ADHD podcast, and that's what we do. So look at my stuff if you want.
Absolutely.
Nailed it. Crushed it.
You crushed it. Absolutely crushed it.
Still, you'd think after like a year of doing this, I'd be good at like the promotional stuff, but I still feel supremely awkward whenever I have to do it. So I'm always just like, oh, I guess I have a TikTok.
No, it was perfect. But yeah, thanks again so much for coming on. You're doing incredible things. Just being yourself, really, which has to be the most rewarding thing, is just you know you're doing all this, being yourself, helping out so many people.
Oh, well, thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate it. It's very kind of you to say.
All right. Thank you, Catie.
Thank you guys.
Dude, how fucking awesome was that?
That was awesome, man. I can't even think of the last time I had a conversation with someone who comes across so authentic and so kind and informative that like you feel like you've known them forever.
Yeah.
Like it's rare to find that in a person, and that was just so incredibly cool. And I mean, we tried to thank her enough, but I don't think we could ever actually thank her enough for coming on
and being our first interview.
Yeah. Because man, she does so much. You'll hear it in the interview. I was like, how do you have time to sleep? And then she's like, I really don't.
Yeah.
What is
She
sleep?
said, I haven't slept in years.
What is sleep? There's so much on her plate, and we got a scoop.
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
we got a scoop,
book, man.
and I hope to God she doesn't get any trouble for that. I'm not gonna lie.
Off our little ass podcast, ain't nobody gonna know.
Dude, I mean, again, we talked about it during the interview. Everything is relative.
Yes.
So, like, to some other people's podcasts, we're not little. To her, we're small time. We're small potatoes.
Absolutely.
We're absolutely small potatoes.
But now, again, Catie, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. Thank you so much for even answering my email and my DM on Twitter. Like, it's just, this was the coolest moment that I've ever had within my podcasting career.
Our brief podcasting career.
Yeah.
Of 2 years.
But let's go ahead and tell you guys where you can find us. So you can connect with CGC on our website, which is consolegamingcrew.com. You can also go ahead and send us an email, consolegamingcrew@gmail.com. You can go ahead and tell us what you like, what you don't like, topic thoughts, doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do, send it. Our Twitter is @consolecrew. Our YouTube and Instagram are both Console Gaming Crew. Facebook is bullshit, but you can also go ahead if you really want to talk to us and talk to many, many other creators, content creators. Find them, check them out. Please go to bossrushgames.com. The Boss Rush Network is everything you need when it comes down to entertainment, content creation, and gaming. So please go check them out. Again, that is bossrushgames.com. We also have a Twitch. Our Twitch is CGC Podcast. We have my co-op Monday nights where I run with the boys. Our Friday nights are Fun Friday. We've been running
Chill.
We're running chill. But look, man, we always figure something else out.
You know what you and I should do? Because you haven't gotten to mess with it yet, and Anthony and I actually never finished it. Maybe you and I can get into A Way Out, because that's still on Game Pass, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Cool. For the nights where if we are not all three playing chill or something.
All right, but as always, we appreciate y'all sitting down, listening to the interview, and chilling. So until next time, stay safe, wash your hands, mask up.
Game on.
Game on, y'all.